Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Roman Kalyuzhny with us. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Roman.
That's great.
Founder, yeah, founder and CPO, Chief Product Officer at PM Insights. I call it PMI Insights for some reasons, but yeah, very interesting guy. We're about to partner up on some um, broker referral stuff, pre IPO shares, liquidation. And Roman runs a data platform for brokers doing exactly just that. So, highly bullish on him, what he does, and partnering up and working with him. So, Roman, welcome to the pod. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you've been up to.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Appreciate the opportunity to share the story here. Um, we are PM Insights, as you pointed out, focused on secondary markets for private company shares. Private companies, obviously not being listed on any exchange, do still get their shares traded, but that happens in a more sort of peer-to-peer fashion. Oftentimes with an intermediary involved, and these are brokers, broker dealers in the space that are registered with FINRA, and they essentially, just like a real estate agent would help somebody buy or sell a house, these guys help people buy and sell shares in private companies, right? They help people connect with each other, investors, who want access to these growth companies that have continued to remain private for longer and longer over the last decade, right? Companies used to go public in just 4, 5, 6 years, maybe a decade ago, and now they're staying private for 12, 15 years. I think SpaceX was founded in 2002, if I'm not mistaken, still private. Even though they're now, discussing a potential IPO this year, but nevertheless, still private after 20 plus years. So a lot of these companies have grown massively, and people are obviously looking to get access. While some of the largest VC firms will have access to the cap table directly, there's plenty of opportunities to get access in the secondary market. And that's where the broker dealer community comes in. And we are a data vendor and analytics vendor that helps people understand what is actually happening in that market, what is happening to the pricing of these companies, of these late stage private companies. And we do that by working with a broker dealer consortium, almost 50 brokers now in the group. And they are essentially feeding us data in exchange for getting a view of the market overall, because the market is very fragmented. It's not like your traditional capital markets where you have the big banks really dominating the space. Here you have a lot of boutique players with access to specific companies that few others will have access to, right? Because there are so many private companies. Okay, yes, maybe there's only 1,000 or 1,500 unicorns, although with AI that number has grown quite quickly. Still, there is a a lot of brokers out there who will get you into a particular company that few others would be able to help with. And as a result, we have a very sort of fragmented space, a lot of brokers in the space, and so it helps to get a large tent going, which is what we're looking to do, of course, to get as many brokers as we can, because obviously the broader the broker set, the better the data, and a better view of the market we're able to provide. And we do this, of course, on a give-get basis with the brokers. So brokers don't actually have to pay in order to work with us. They can get a view into the market by contributing data. And at the same time, we coalesce this data, we build analytics tools on top of it, and we're thus able to charge a subscription to investors in the space or lenders, funds that basically look to invest in these companies, and then on the back of those investments, value their portfolios, or they just want to know what's happening in the market. Or you have maybe lenders that want to lend against shares in these companies, either to founders or to early stage employees or to funds that hold these investments. So there's a broad range of potential buyers of our data and of our analytics, and that's basically what we do in a nutshell.
And before you were doing that, what were you doing? And also, I think you were in Ukraine for some time. Like, what's your founder story? What's your life story?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind the company and this setup that we have here is not actually original to myself and the other founder, Nick Fosco. So this comes from a setup that was created by a chap called Lance Ugla back in the early 2000s, who set up a company called Market, which then became IHS Market, which then got acquired by Standard & Poor's. And Nick and I met working for that company. So I was in London at the time back in 2007, and he was in the US, and he moved to London in 2008, and that's how we met. And we were working on credit derivatives and asset-backed securities, but the same approach was being used. That is a give-get model, get all the broker dealers to contribute data in exchange for more data back, and then charge a subscription fee to the investor community that's interested in having a independent third-party view of the market without having any skin in the game. And that's the same thing we're doing here, right? We're independent. We're not looking to facilitate transactions for a fee or anything like that. So the independence component is very important to us. And indeed, just as the company was getting founded, I was back then still in Ukraine, which is where I'm originally from. I was born in the USSR, in fact. So before Ukraine was independent, and but then I was lucky and ended up having an opportunity to come to the UK when I was a teenager in the mid '90s. So I kind of I grew up in the UK, but went back to Ukraine in sort of 2012. Around 2012, and was there for 10 years doing sort of product and program management, account management, that sort of stuff for large corporates on behalf of IT outsourcing and outstaffing companies in Ukraine. So that's kind of was my introduction to product management, I guess, and running development teams. And that was after my experience with Market, which is where I met Nick and cut my teeth on kind of pricing and data in financial markets.
Right. And yeah, how did that shape you, that international background and moving around, being born in the USSR? Do you feel that made you different? Do you feel that led you to entrepreneurship in some way?
Well, I guess everything makes us somehow unique, right? Every experience. It's hard to put my finger on what exactly led me to entrepreneurship because I suppose because the collapse of the USSR led to such a chaotic time, and just working for a company and earning a salary was so difficult, and I saw that firsthand with my parents and with my friends' parents. That did certainly leave a mark about how working for someone else, you can potentially be at a massive disadvantage versus somebody who's running their own business and can be in charge of calling the shots and knowing how to adapt and doing so quickly and that sort of thing. So there's probably some of that, having a role. Also, I mean, yeah, I mean, my father ended up starting his own business, so I guess there must be some sort of genetic entrepreneurship in me. Who knows how that works? But yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things, and it's just, I guess, suppose just generally one's want to controls one's destiny, right? And that is more achievable by being an entrepreneur versus by obviously working for a company. But having said that, yeah, there's always pluses and minuses to everything. Being an entrepreneur comes with a lot of ups and downs. It's much more of a roller coaster ride, that's for sure. And it's not for the faint-hearted, as I found out firsthand.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. The business model of PM Insights basically, brokers don't pay a thing. They share info, they get info, but the regulators pay something, right? Is that how you make money with that one?
So investors, other participants in the market, what you might say buy side, so funds, hedge funds, asset managers, family offices. So anyone who's interested in the data but is not able to be a contributor because the concern with working with someone like on the buy side or as a fund manager, they need this data for valuing their portfolio and eventually reporting that to their LPs, right, to their holder, to their investors, end investors. And if they were also somehow contributing to the service, that makes it possible for them to manipulate the output, right, and which then makes them potentially look better, for example, right, in their reporting. So that's why we avoid taking in data from the buy side. Rather, we offer them the service, so they use it and they pay for it. But we take the data from the brokers because the brokers, yes, they have skin in the game, but they have skin in the game in terms of getting a deal done, not necessarily about caring about what a company is valued at and etc. Right? So it's more about just getting deals done and having that flow. So that's why they find us valuable because they provide us data, they don't have to pay anything, they get data back, they see a broader picture of the market, again, because the space is fragmented, they might only be working on a handful of companies, whereas the the market is obviously hundreds of companies. So they get a broader view into the market, and they also can use us as a way to educate customers, right? I mean, again, market is pretty opaque still, and people may not necessarily know where things are trading. They might still be relying on their last round, or it's just kind of news reporting. And we're, as an independent third party, can be quoted by brokers to show, look, this is where the market is. You don't have to believe me, as a broker. Here's the independent view based on almost 50 brokers' inputs. So that's what makes us also attractive to the broker community. And yeah, the subscriptions paid by the buy-side participants, right, the funds, etc. That's what keeps us going, right? That's how we make the money.
And you said roller coaster. I mean, yeah, 100% true. What kind of roller coasters have you gone so far? Because you're in a hot market, right? That's for sure. But even that, like a business needs like 10 flywheels to be super successful, especially reach unicorn status. So, yeah, what kind of ride have you gone yourself in so far? And did it fulfill your expectations?
Well, it's certainly been very interesting. So it certainly fulfilled my expectations in terms of experiences gained. It's been quite a topsy-turvy ride because when we started the company, that was sort of Q3 of 2021, approaching peak bubble in post-COVID tech valuations, both private and public. And we launched our APIs for the data. We didn't even have a UI. We just started with APIs in early 2022, and that's when things started to crash, right? And on the one hand, that gave us an opportunity to quickly show people just how wrong an approach it is to rely on primary funding round data for your valuations, because by mid 2022 or late 2022, you still had funds doing that and claiming that nothing's changed, when in fact valuations, and you could see this from our data from the secondary market, valuations had come down in some cases by 80, 90%. And you already started seeing that by kind of Q2 of 2022. Klarna famously had that down round in the summer in July, I think, of 22, down by like 80% from their previous round in 21. And we had data to show how like their pricing was just collapsing in the lead up to that primary round, right? But plenty of companies didn't have a round in 22, or certainly not in early 22, and yet you could see their pricing already starting to collapse. And we were, as far as I know, we were the first to show this on for the market as a whole, and we were like even quoted in like The Economist, Financial Times, Reuters, all using our benchmark PM50, or back then we were called APU, a private equity view. APU50 index was quoted there to show just how it went up and then just started to come down very quickly in 2022. Whereas plenty of other traditional players like Cambridge Analytica were still, Cambridge Associates were still showing, up and to the right, sort of picture of the market based on primary funding of the past, right, of the past years. And other funds were still holding at last funding round, hoping things will turn around quickly, which of course they didn't. It was a good sort of 18 months right up until kind of late 23, early 24, before liquidity started to come back to the market, to the private secondary market, and we started seeing more of a recovery, somewhat powered by also AI names coming through, obviously, like OpenAI, Anthropic, and others. But also generally, the market began to turn around, and more demand was coming back, and you started seeing more bids as opposed to just offers and trades getting done, etc. So and all of that you could actually see from our data, the spreads narrowing between bids and offers. The gap was just huge in 2022, 23. But by sort of early 24, things started to narrow, and that's why more trades started to happen.
What's a blessing? What's a burden of working with brokers? Like you and I, we've talked about. Yeah, I mean, brokers make good money, but I think most of them are old-fashioned, right? Like they don't use tech so much. So what's been the challenge of working with these different ICPs that you're working with? And yeah, what's been the blessing, which I guess is them paying you and finding you very useful?
Well, again, brokers don't pay us, so that's not really a blessing, but they do help us with clients sometimes. So they'll point people in our direction, as I said, because it's useful to them and it's useful to the potential customers. And they're certainly happy to talk with us on like webinars, and to run events, which helps everybody to promote activity in the space. On the one hand, they're quite good to deal with because they're super responsive. They're always ready to they're very reactive. On the other hand, they can be quite sort of just focused on the next thing, like on the deal, and not necessarily thinking like longer term, or maybe not longer term, but like broader, let's say, right? Like they're very focused on just getting to a close, getting more leads, closing more deals, which makes sense. That's their role, and that's what they need to be doing. But that sometimes makes it harder to kind of discuss kind of broader strategic initiatives with them, and organize more events, etc. So yeah, that's the kind of mixed bag of working with folks who are highly focused on sort of transactional interactions.
Right. What are the most impressive private companies that are about to IPO that you've seen, and why?
Well, I mean, I think the first one is going to be SpaceX, obviously, especially after the recent merger with XAI and all the talk of data centers in space. And they're impressive for both good and bad reasons. I'd say impressive for just the sheer scale of resource they've managed to marshal. And well, obviously under Elon Musk's leadership, and also the the successes they've achieved that nobody really has managed to achieve prior to that, despite spending huge sums of money. I'm talking about governments, right? So these guys have a network of satellites that's just unparalleled. And we have countries, Ukraine included, right, like super reliant on that technology, and like for even survival. So the fact that they've gotten themselves into that position is highly impressive. Now at the same time, might there be a point where this becomes what's the opposite of a blessing in disguise, a curse in disguise, where they're trying to do potentially too many things, too many hard things at once. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, definitely a super impressive company, and how they managed to grow and produce some incredibly impressive results and technology. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, the AI names are both impressive and scary, in terms of the progress that's being made now, and what might that mean for the future of humanity. Both OpenAI and Anthropic, doing great things. And the fact that Anthropic has managed to make so much progress despite OpenAI having such a great head start, like with ChatGPT when it first came out, and got so many users under their belt, and so much traction, and still Anthropic has, I mean, maybe not caught up, but is close. Certainly on the enterprise side of things, that's also been very impressive. I mean, and from that perspective, perhaps I'm more impressed. I don't know. I'm somehow more inclined to be more impressed with Anthropic than I am with OpenAI. And yeah, I suppose there is also the robotics companies. I'm not sure if they're ready for IPO, but there are also some very impressive robotics companies that are doing some incredibly interesting things in the space. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine there'll be a lot of consolidation in the future, especially with some of these legacy manufacturers probably looking to get in on the action, and by buying some of these robotics companies, as opposed to waiting for them to IPO. So it's definitely a super interesting space in terms of technology. But if we go back to more kind of traditional things, I'd say Ramp has been a very impressive story. So Ramp, the fintech, they've really knocked it out of the park, and they are now like over 30 billion valuation in the secondary market. Are just doing incredibly well. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, what are you expecting of Ramp? Like, I really didn't think much of them. Their offering was pretty limited. I thought Brex was already dominating that space, and you had Stripe, dominating the payments on the private company side. So the fact that Ramp managed to squeeze through and to just create this very impressive kind of neobank offering, and really beat Brex at their own game, that was very, very interesting to see. And if the market remains bullish on IPOs, I reckon they will have a great IPO probably at one point later this year.
Love that. What's next for you and PM?
Well, I mean, we're doing obviously a lot of work to try and get more of the brokers on board. Keep growing that community. We also want to do more events with brokers together, so that this is a kind of more engaged and interactive and a kind of community-oriented space. And we also obviously want to grow our offering in terms of product. So not just purely kind of data, but also some interesting projections and calculation engine that we would like to build out and help people value companies that don't have any secondary market activity, right? Or just earlier stage, and help understand how that they could potentially develop and evolve based on what's happening in the secondary market with their later stage peers. So all things like that, as well as we've partnered up with some big names, MSCI, S&P, also smaller names like Syntax around indices. So I'm excited to see indices coming to the space, which is a very interesting development. So we'll have potentially, publicly trade. Well, not potentially. We already have potentially. Sorry, we already have publicly traded index products out there, and I am expecting more to come. So there's definitely going to be more money flowing in the direction of this space of private markets. Obviously, you see that already also happening with respect to retirement funds. All these advisors thinking about how they can incorporate more of the private market, into these funds. And I think that, of course, means transparency and clear understanding of what's happening in this market just becomes incredibly important. And so I guess we're privileged to be in this space at this time, because I think the attention is only growing to, it's great to be in private markets, but what does that actually mean in terms of performance, in terms of return on investment? And so, yeah, we want to be part of that story of growth, and ensure that growth can be sustainable and is not jeopardized by potentially bad behavior, which is certainly more likely to happen when opacity is high.
I do agree with that. Roman, where can people find out more about you?
I mean, obviously, pminsights.com is where they can learn a lot about what we do. And me personally, LinkedIn is always a good resource. So I would point them in the direction of my page and PM Insights page there. We're constantly posting updates, also on Twitter or X, sorry. Old habits die hard. So yeah, X, LinkedIn for updates from us, and also pminsights.com.
Roger that. It's always Roman and Charles for another founder